I wanted to just kick things off a little bit and explain not only maybe a little bit about why Richard's doing this, but also why this gentleman is here with the camera pointed at me. And part of this is really sort of starting to record, in a sense, an oral history for the firm. And I think that as we're continuing to evolve and grow and wrestle with succession and transition issues, it's really important that we do this, that we really share these important stories and important ideas with all of you who are coming into the organization.
This presentation brings about 30 different jobs. There's some very entertaining and some educational things that you can learn from looking at what we've done as a firm over these many years. Our application for Pontchartrain was presented to HUD in Washington at the end with a huge team. Our application for Pontchartrain was presented to HUD in Washington at the end with a huge team, basin, to the human digestive system, where he explained that you begin your meal in Minneapolis, you find digestion in St. Louis, and guess where that leaves New Orleans? That didn't set too well with the evaluation committee, and it was not given a Hope 6 grant. Now, this one was in many ways the profile project for the city, where we did the master plan for Liberty Place. Willard Rouse became a friend of mine, and we worked many, many places, including France and London and Church Farm School and Penn's Landing. But Liberty Place was the initiation of that. I think those of you, Richard, Bartholomew, who were in the meetings with Willard, and we talked about this development, would be very excited by the kind of creativity of actually building above Ed Bacon's height limit. Now, I hadn't seen Ed for many years before this proposal was put forth, and when he learned of it, it created a magnificent controversy, which made it all the way to the front page of the paper, the first building taller than City Hall. And finally, when it was presented to City Council, it was Ed Bacon and his presentation versus ours with Willard Rouse. Ed Bacon had a unique presentation. It was a picture of City Hall with two adjacent, what looked like buildings that were shorter than City Hall. He then had a recording which recorded all the ethnic voices of Philadelphia, from African American to Jewish to various heritage, and each of them saying, "Don't build taller than City Hall. Don't do this." And then finally, in a dramatic, as only Ed Bacon could do way, he stood and pulled up each of the buildings on either side of City Hall and said, "Look what would happen if we built tall buildings adjacent to City Hall." Didn't affect council at all. Council went right ahead and approved Liberty Place. The actual design of the canal was a fascinating and award-winning concept. Kent did a magnificent job of designing the water's edge and the whole canal walk, which was the Waterfront Center National Award winner. And I remember that award ceremony very well because we had an exhibit. Most of you didn't know the young woman who worked on that exhibit for us. And one of the visitors to our booth at the Waterfront Center was a gentleman named Joe Brown. Joe Brown was president of EDOL at the time and came up to our booth and was looking around, and this young woman said, "Can I help you, sir? Can I tell you about WRT?" And he said, "Well, I know about WRT." Well, come on, let me tell you. I know lots about what we can do, and it's a wonderful firm. Well, yeah, well, look, I'm Joe Brown. And our bubbly young lady said, "Oh, well, Mr. Brown, let me tell you some more about this. And here's other things that we've done. Let me tell you. You know the Inner Harbor? Let me tell you, we did it all." So this was the super saleswoman, and the guy, Joe Brown, turns and says, "Look, I'm Joe Brown, and I'm president of EDAW." And she turned and said, "EDAW?" So one of the great events. The governor was late, as he usually is. 15 minutes, comes in late, trips over the cord to the PowerPoint presentation, knocks it over on the floor, completely ends any hope of a PowerPoint show, picks up the drawings, and starts presenting to the foundation group why he thinks it's a great project. Now, Carl and I just sat there while the governor made the whole show. Unfortunately, he didn't convince the whole financial group, and the project didn't go ahead. Mill Creek was one of the last Hope 6 projects that got funded. This one's in Philadelphia, and it's sort of coming the whole story because years ago in school I had a studio with Louis Kahn, and here was one of the first developments he actually designed and built, and we're going to tear it down, and we did, and we should have. Because this particular development had just about everything wrong in terms of where high-rise was located, security, and the buildings were falling apart. Now, as you know, WRT designed the master plan for the U.S. Capitol, which was an award-winning project. We learned a lot about the history of how some of the Capitol buildings are actually designed. There was a design competition in Illinois for doing the new Capitol building, and there was a award. I think it was $25,000 at that time, and the award was to be given to the winner in the design competition. The architects all scurried around and did their design, but the winner was very practical. He gave $5,000 to each of the selection committee, and then was selected. Then, once he got his award, he got his $25,000 back. Myself, I've worked in Taipei, in Barcelona, in London, in Paris, and that's fun. And I'm a little too old for that today, so I don't want to do that anymore. But I think most of the people in this room are perfectly equipped, and technology is ready.
Attention, attention. This is just, it's been great. I want to thank Richard, first of all, for the presentation. And as I mentioned something to you earlier about the comments at the principal meeting in December that led to us doing this with Richard, I have to share with you that the comments that really stood out of my mind from that session were really the words like warm, generous, and welcoming. And that's really, for me, I think what Richard stands out for me. And it really goes back to what WRT is all about, and it's all about the people.
All of you picked up on his presentation is the number of people that he's worked with. In every project, he mentioned me, mentioned you, mentioned Gil, mentioned this and other staff, and I think he personifies the idea of a collaborative environment where principals avail themselves of whoever's got the talent in the different disciplines to do something that's unique. And I think that's kind of the hallmark of what we do. So, Richard, I hold you in very high esteem for that dedication. Thank you.
And I remembered, I'm sure NASA remembers, one interview that the three of us went to with the Walt Disney Company. We were going to do this job, but before the interview, we were very nervous, and we were going into the Disney Company, and Richard split his pants down the back. And he spent the whole interview with his back to the audience. It was a superb performance. But we didn't get the job.
And I'm still here. Anytime you want to come over, I've got a great house. Come over and
You know where next year's Christmas party is.
we've had them there. I had a Christmas party at my house.
You did.
I brought a mariachi band in.